Are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
I can't hear you!
Aye, aye, Captain!
It's time for the moment like 3-ish, maybe 4 tops of you have been waiting for. You get the idea. When the topic of good licensed video games comes up, SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom is almost always mentioned. And even when we're not on the topic, it still comes up. The one left behind. Butterbuns, what you talking about? Moses might as well have walked across the fucking desert for 40 years to bring SpongeBob to the promised land. Everyone born around 1998 wants their favorite YouTubers to talk about this game. Even I got like 10 people asking me to make a video. And for me, 10 people might as well be a million. I see more people talking about this singular entity than the actual cartoon. Do people even watch the cartoon anymore? Apparently they do. Every time I go to check, it's on a new season. I was more of a Cartoon Network kid myself back then, but I definitely flipped over to Nickelodeon for a SpongeBob episode or two. So at the easily swayed age of 8, it was all but guaranteed Battle for Bikini Bottom would fall into my lap. I think I played this game as much, if not more, than Super Monkey Ball, and y'all know by now how much I love me some Monkey Ball. Fuck you! Fuck you and everything you stand for, you piece of shit! Don't give up. Rat's fucking ass!
Battle for Bikini Bottom is a good game. It's pretty good. It's pretty dang good. I'll throw a dang in there. Though I can only speak on behalf of the console version, and indeed that's the version that most people prefer to anyway. I've never actually seen the PC version, let alone played it. I wonder what that's like. Let's take a look at that real quick.
And I give up immediately. The game is good.
The game is fun.
But good usually isn't supposed to be enough for a licensed game to maintain a legacy like this. Especially when you consider no one speaks nicely about any SpongeBob games that came before this one. At all. Battle for Bikini Bottom showed up, it did its business, it remembered to wash its hands on the way out. But Moses, man, he struck that rock twice. But why? He knew God was gonna get mad.
So this is going to be like one of those shitty video essays that YouTube always loves to shove onto your recommended feed. Like, why thing you like from your childhood is actually trash and you're stupid for liking it. But more so, why thing you like from your childhood is good, but like minus a point or two, and also tone it down, just calm down just a little tiny bit, just a bit, just tiny bit.
Battle for Bikini Bottom is an interesting game for me to talk about because for most positive aspects I can bring up, and I can bring up a lot, I usually find one tiny nitpick nestled away within each said positive aspect. For example, positive. You can play as 3 characters, which brings forth some nice variety. SpongeBob, despite usually being depicted as a weakling in the show, is probably the best fighter of the 3, with plenty of options in his arsenal. Sandy's the most agile with the ability to swing and glide, and Patrick can throw stuff sometimes. Patrick's unique ability to throw stuff isn't as useful as the unique abilities of the other 2 characters. The usefulness of stacking blocks is very circumstantial, and while you can throw them at enemies, it's way slower and not as much fun to use as the other characters' abilities. I'd say just stick to the other 2 characters as often as possible, except some levels only let you switch to Sandy, and others only let you switch to Patrick. I guess the glide would be a little OP in certain areas, but it still feels a little limiting. Oh, the sponge ball sucks ass too. It's only required in like 3 spots in the game, but holy shit.
Ready? Go!
Otherwise, it's just Patrick I don't like to play as. He isn't unplayable by any means, but every time I had to switch to him, I'm like... All the levels are locations from the show, which is the obvious safe route to take, but they're faithfully recreated, fully realized, and fun to explore, and some are also cleverly adorned with a few cute references to specific episodes. But they haven't aged too hot from a visual standpoint. SpongeBob was a cartoon where 90% of the time, ocean sand was on the screen. Your focus was usually on the characters and dialogue most of the time though, so it was fine. But in a video game where your job is to look around at everything, and you look out into the distance and you just see sand for miles, it's just bland. This is mostly for early game levels. About halfway through, the settings do start to allow for more visual creativity.
When you can actually see where you're fucking going.
My problems with the visuals also extend to the character models, which by themselves look fine, except maybe Mr. Krabs, who looks like he hit too much of the secret Krabby Patty sauce. But their animations look unnatural at times. Not that they never look unnatural in the show on purpose. And 2D animation is hard to translate to 3D. And this game came out 15 years ago. But come on, what the fuck is this?
Don't ask questions you aren't prepared to handle the answer to.
It was a rhetorical question. That's the wrong setting.
I don't want to be that guy who says, oh, just cel shade it, it'll look better. Except I am gonna be that guy, cause they did it in some levels in Creature from the Krusty Krab, and it looked pretty good. And not like the kids care, but even for a game meant for a younger demographic, the game's also pretty easy. You start the game with 3 hit points, which you can then immediately upgrade to 4 before you even enter the first level. And while that sounds like it isn't too generous, most robots go down in 1 hit, so you're not going to be in the middle of a fight for too long. And also there's health pickups all over the place. By the time you max out at 6 hit points, bottomless pits are going to be the only thing ever killing you after that. And except for a handful of challenges getting reset, there are no penalties for dying, and lives are infinite. Mario Odyssey proved you don't need an extra life system to make a compelling game, and there still are indeed some tricky spots.
If only because you can't see where you're fucking going.
But there's checkpoints all over the place, and sometimes you'll respawn in areas that don't even have checkpoints. I found most of the tricky spots came toward the late game. SpongeBob's Dream has some pretty crazy platforming and narrow slides where precision is very important, and a lot of people had problems with this mousetrap-ass thing in the Mermalair. I definitely had problems with it as a kid myself, but I didn't find it that bad this time around. It just requires a bit of trial and error. But in Flying Dutchman's Graveyard, some nitwit thought scrolling horizontal wall jumps with a fixed zoomed-out camera angle was a good idea. And did I mention I can't fucking see anything? If you didn't know what a brightness setting was, and most kids didn't, hope you had fun in Kelp Forests, dickface. I remember first time I ever played this game, I was stuck at the very beginning of Kelp Forest for 20 minutes because I couldn't see this trampoline leaf wedged in the corner. While I would have liked the difficulty bumped up a little bit, or at least a difficulty option, if you're shooting for 100%, you do have to get a little creative to find all the collectibles. For example, I didn't know until years later that you had to use SpongeBob's cruise bubble on the sewer grate cover in the background of the graveyard to get the goop to lower so you could get a spatula. This is the only thing in the whole game that isn't a robot, switch, or tiki that you can use the cruise bubble on. I still haven't decided whether this was clever because it was the only instance, or bullshit because it was the only instance. But otherwise, again, game coulda used a bit more in the difficulty department. But then again, I've been caught on stream drowning in the same 1-foot-tall fountain twice in a row, so you can just go ahead and ignore me.
I hurt myself today.
Now, if you subscribe to the notion that the quality of the writing in SpongeBob took a nosedive after the first movie came out in 2004, this game came out in 2003, so we're supposedly safe for now. On the whole, I thought the game had a lot of great humor. Even this tutorial sign in SpongeBob's house explains how hit points work by dropping an anvil on you mid-tutorial. I thought that was great. And with the dream world being the hardest level in the game, and Patrick's dream being the last dream you can enter, you would think it'd be some kind of penultimate challenge. And you go into this dimly lit room, and he's just standing there menacingly. And he challenges you to find the golden spatula! And then you say it's in his hand already, and he congratulates you, and he just gives it to you. And then while Patrick and Sandy have normal sliding animations, SpongeBob decides he's too cool for taste buds. Damn, ladies, get yourself a partner who does tongue work like that. Mmm!
Surf's up, dude! Whoa!
This joke was a terrible idea. Even before I remembered that I own 2 cats.
So there's genuinely good writing and laughs in here, but then there's some things I only find funny thanks to factors outside of writing. And then there's stuff like...
Lighten up a bit on the enthusiasm, huh? You're making my bowels act up.
Which I still find funny, but I really shouldn't.
And I guess the last thing to mention is the sound. The characters are voiced as well as you would expect, and most return, except for Ernest Borgnine and Clancy Brown, the latter of which at the time was busy solving android murder cases. As it turns out, spoiler alert, 2003 is the actual year Detroit Become Human takes place, which is David Cage's best David Cage plot twist of all time. So yeah, everyone else is good, but Mermaid Man and Mr. Krabs now stand like a sore thumb.
Your treasure chest's looking a bit light, boy.
Bit light, boy.
Throw the throw fruit!
My entire existence is pain!
But damn, I don't know who they threw on the soundtrack, but we got some bops. Kelp Forests, for as much as I love to shit on it, has a beautiful atmospheric track. The final boss is a grand, epic track. And then Jellyfish Fields is the internal soundtrack that plays in my head whenever I'm shitposting.
And that is why Bowsette can defeat Thanos. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
And I don't know, that's about it, really. That's all I got.
Look, listen, fellow kids, I've played Battle for Bikini Bottom just as much as the rest of you have as kids, and even recently on stream. And yet, I struggled to write much of a script beyond, I like this, I didn't like that as much, there's this, fucking... It's just a good game. It didn't need to innovate, and it didn't. It just needed to do its job and do it good. And good it did. Hell, I recommend people give this game a shot on a rainy day. Just don't go in expecting the best 3D platformer you've ever played, like some people's comments would seemingly hype it up to be, and then you'll be completely satisfied. Because either way, we all know that at the end of the day, the best SpongeBob game is actually SpongeBob SquarePants for Game Boy Advance Video, which lets you watch your favorite SpongeBob SquarePants episodes on the go. You can't beat that deal. Moses will strike that rock as many times as necessary. Now, on the other hand, where I believe this game shines the most nowadays is for speedrunning, which I discussed a bit in a speedrun video I did a while back. By itself, Battle for Bikini Bottom is an above-average cult classic, but watching someone else blast through this game, you'd think it's way deeper than it actually is. This movement gets insane! You can skip some bosses by activating cutscene triggers placed out of bounds. You can use a trick called the Cruise Boost to gain extra speed to cross gaps you're not supposed to, which can also help you effectively go through some levels backwards to get spatulas faster. One of the easier tricks, and the only one I myself could ever pull off successfully, was disabling out-of-bounds triggers, which is done via some shenanigans with taxi pads, which basically lets you nab spatulas that are supposed to be unreachable via normal means. Just remember to re-enable the kill zones before doing long sections you're not good at. Yeah, those 2 million checkpoints haphazardly scattered about ain't gonna help me out of this one.
So originally, I was just gonna play this clip again.
You're making my bowels act up.
And then abruptly end the whole video. But early this year, I heard whispers that after Activision lost the rights to SpongeBob video games, that THQ Nordic and Nickelodeon supposedly announced that they were remaking Battle for Bikini Bottom. And I was like, yeah, okay, who told you that one? Someone who makes PS4 and Xbox One renders on DeviantArt? Okay, I believe him. But I looked it up, and I found an actual tweet.
March early this year at THQ Nordic. Hashtag THQ Nordic and hashtag Nickelodeon bring back selected game titles from the past. More information can be found here. with a link to their website for a post with a big list of games on it. Battle for Bikini Bottom isn't mentioned specifically, but they put in fucking Back at the Barnyard. So for how many people go gaga for Battle for Bikini Bottom, surely they know what they're doing. That said, we don't know what they're doing. It's been roughly 6 months since this announcement, and there's been no word since. It was announced, a couple of outside entities reported on the announcement when it happened, and then otherwise after that, there's been zero word. Not like there's never been game announcements that show up and then go dark for a very long time, but for something like this, where the only thing going for you is one noteworthy game and then a bunch of nostalgia boxes, this seems like a weird time to choose to keep the cards so close to your chest.
And hey, I would buy a re-release of Battle for Bikini Bottom. If they made a Spongebob collection of some kind, I'd probably get it. I wouldn't care about 80% of the games on it, but that's just what nostalgia does to some people. Now, would I buy it to the extent that every time THQ Nordic tweets anything, I reply, when are you gonna remake Battle for Bikini Bottom? Am I gonna do that every time they tweet? No. I don't get you people in that regard. I like the game well and dandy and fine enough, but
You're making my bowels act up.
yeah, that, sure.